I am definitely. Are you hearing me now? Anybody getting me now? I've just changed the output. That should do it. Anybody else? Would anybody like to comment and let me know that you can hear me? Dan, you can hear me? Thank you for that. Thank you very much indeed. My apologies. Yes, I don't know what happened there. Audio source just changed itself for some reason. I don't know what that would have been, but we got there in the end. Good morning, everyone. How on earth are we doing? I'm going to say a very quick good morning to all of those that were here. Dan Cullen was here at 6:21 this morning. What was it like here at 6 o'clock this morning? I honestly no idea. I was fast asleep. Gary Muirhead says, good morning, gang. Mark, I'm sure I saw Mark Whiting here as well. He is here, present and correct. And yes, I think we've resolved the sound issues. To everybody over on Instagram, my apologies. We were experiencing a few technical glitches, but I think we're past it now. Lots to get through today, as per usual. I do want to let you know, very quick good morning, by the way, to Chris Ford, who has just arrived. Morning, Chris. Thank you very much indeed for being here. I'm working on a thing in the background. These morning monologues, as you well know, I tend to take the words from the morning monologue and turn them into, blog posts or LinkedIn posts or posts for the Demolition Insider. Sat there last night and I was trying to figure out like a series. And I've got a 3-parter coming up. And 3-parter is the likely impact of our transition from diesel to another power source, be it electric or hydrogen. And it's quite interesting. When I actually sort of set aside the microphone and the keyboard and everything else and just sat there and put my brain in gear and thought about it, it's really quite interesting, the likely implications on things like, well, for example, what happens to all the people that we rely on as fitters now? Can they transition to from diesel to electric to hydrogen? Will we need a new generation of those? So that's part of it. I was also thinking about the third world market. I realise we don't have to worry about that too much ourselves, but there's always been a bit of a split within the market of, we here in the UK and in Australia, Scandinavia and America, we've always taken low emission, the lowest possible emission machines. And there's been other parts of the world, notably Africa, Russia used to be another one of them, where they would tolerate higher emissions. They got less excited about emissions. As far as I know, that system still exists. And they are free to choose. I wish everybody was at the same standard so that we could start to save the planet altogether. But, that's where we are. But a lot of those markets do also rely upon used equipment from first world nations like Scandinavia, the UK, America, and places like that. So our machines, our highfalutin machines, will be going to the third world market. We've already got a bit of an issue getting power to electric machines and more specifically getting fuel to hydrogen machines here. How are those third world markets going to cope with that? When in, 10, 15 years time, rather than lots of used diesel machines rolling off the ship at the dock, they start to get hydrogen machines. How are they going to deal with that? I was thinking about all of that last night. Just goes to show I have no social life. I have nothing else on my brain. I'll be bringing that to you probably next week, assuming I can flesh it all out. So, having got that off my chest, without further ado, let me roll the intro, post the question of the day, and get this all underway. It is Wednesday, the 14th of May. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the Walrus of Demolition, the Lord High Chancellor of live streaming. In today's show, Case and the evolution of the backhoe loader. Manitou embraces the hydrogen revolution. We're recycling in France with Montabert, and we're heading back to Bauma for a bit of a roundup of what's hot and what's not. Just a very quick point on that. That video is, I think it's exactly 5 minutes long. At about the 4-minute mark, you will see somebody walk into the into the back of the shot. I'll tell you more about it when we get there, but I've left it in. I could have taken it out, but I've left it in because it amuses me no end. I'll come back to that anyway. Plus, in my morning monologue today, conspiracy more than a theory. Yeah, we'll come to that. All of that in just a moment. What do we got here? Gary Muirhead says all we seem to be doing is moving our problems elsewhere, or somewhere else rather, for them to deal with, and the problem is still there. I totally agree. And isn't that the way that we are anyway? Transportation of the MSA, maybe a logistical nightmare with hydrogen. I think we're starting to see it now. Obviously, we do have a few manufacturers that have dipped their toe into hydrogen waters. I think, given a fair wind, I would imagine that the likes of JCB and Liebherr could probably bring hydrogen machines to market properly, commercially available in not too long. But what we're going to run them on now, I think we're one step ahead. We do already have here in the UK specifically. We do have hydrogen outlets, not many, but we do have some. Certainly in the Netherlands, they're starting to get a few as well. But what if you're in the centre of Africa somewhere? We'll come. I'll explain more when we finally do all of that. But yes, without further ado, no, I don't do that further ado bit here, do I? I'm going to tell you about the mystery machine immediately after this. I will show you the mystery machine in just a moment, but I just want to say a few good mornings because for some reason, I don't know why, Instagram is going absolutely mental at the moment. Christopher Everhart is over there. Chilton63 is over there. Bjark Tantan is over there again. Thank you very much indeed for being here. Matt JK is over there as well. Who else did I see? Oliver Dowling is over there. Loads of people. Instagram, good morning. Thank you very much indeed for being here. Mystery machine. Yes, it looks like this. Now, if you were here yesterday, you will recall that we had, for the first time ever, we actually had a three-way split on the mystery machine. Let me think. Who was it? Ken Hatcher, Jonathan Duras, and Dan Cullen all correctly identified the Hitachi EH400 AC-5, the dump truck. Today's one is probably a little more unusual, I would say. Maybe. But we're looking for a make and a model. Are we going to have one winner? Are we going to have three? Are we going to have two? Is it going to be a split decision? Am I going to emerge victorious, having fooled you all? We shall see. What have we got? Dan Cullen says, tell us about the mystery machine. I'm telling you about the mystery machine. There it is. I've not changed the color. I've not done anything with this at all, aside from removing the background. That's all I've done. See what you can come up with. We're looking for a make and a model. While you're thinking about that, let me very quickly remind you of our question of the day. Yeah, there's a lot of nonsense talked in this industry of ours, and I should know because I'm responsible for about 97% of it. But that is the inspiration for today's question of the day. And the question is quite simply this. Architects, clients, supervisors, your work colleagues, or someone else within the industry, who, in your opinion, talks the most nonsense? And just let me be clear, I will not be offended if you choose me. I will not be offended in any way, shape, or form. I've got my own feelings on all of this, but what about you? What about you? Who do you think spouts the most nonsense? Let us know in the chat. Speaking of the chat, let me go over here. There we are. Dan Cullen reckons our mystery machine could be a JCB 1CX. You'll be astonished just how far away you actually are. Kerry Jones has just joined us. And me drained again must be air pressure. No idea what that means. Gary Muirhead reckons it could be a Bauma BW221D-5. Has anyone noticed? Anyone used to watch what was the program called? QI. for years and years and years, Alan Davis, his default answer to every question that he didn't know the answer to was blue whale. Gary Muirhead does seem to rely on the Bauma answer quite a bit. What's the mystery machine? Yeah, probably a Bauma. It's not a Bauma, I can tell you. Ken Hatcher has just arrived in the chat. Let me formally welcome him with his button. There you are. What have we got here? Yeah, question of the day. Who talks the most nonsense? Site management that's just come out of college. Yeah, I was kind of expecting that as an answer, I have to say. Right, okay, let me show you a bit more of the mystery machine, because I've clearly got you all completely fooled. There you are. You've got the top end of a cab and you've got a bit of rear end, as the actress said to the bishop, undoubtedly. See what you can come up with. We're going to be right back with case and backhoe loaders and the evolution thereof. Yeah, I've already done the introduction to this, so sit back, enjoy the case evolution, particularly the soundtrack, which I think, well, certainly to my taste. Enjoy. Anyone suggesting that the days of the backhoe loader are over, think again, I would say. Now, going back to our question of the day, which is, who talks the most nonsense? Chris Ford. Fellow machine drivers, we all talk bollocks. Well, I'm glad you do, because this show wouldn't exist if you didn't. But yes, I kind of agree. Question of the day, Ken Hatcher, they all talk crap and they've not got a clue, and it's getting worse. You wouldn't argue with that either. Gary Muirhead, Baumag. One of these days it's got to come up. You'd have to think so, wouldn't you? Have we ever featured Baumag? Maybe the time has come, or maybe not. You'll have to watch this space. Let's have a look. Dan Cullen reckons our mystery machine could be a case D-series grader. It is not one of those. Let me show you a smidge more. In fact, let me show you that bit. Yes, it is sat on a set of wheels. If that helps at all. Keep the guesses coming. We're going to be right back. Let me take Dan off the screen. We're going to be right back. Oh, yes, Manitou. I've already talked about hydrogen once today. We're going to talk about it again in a second.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
So hydrogen. It's coming. It's coming slowly, but it is coming. Obviously, we are aware of the fact that JCB have dipped their toe in the water, that Hyundai have done exactly the same, Liebherr have done the same, and probably several others as well. But also, Manitou unveiled their hydrogen machine at Bauma, and we were there to film it. As far as I know, we are the only ones. Take a look.
Good morning, I'm Kevin Arnoux, in charge of construction markets and products for Manitou. Reducing our carbon emission is a key part of our CSR reduction strategy. So we are expanding our range of electric products and innovating with hydrogen telehandler concepts. We are showcasing as well electric telehandlers, MUP, massive forklift truck today. and they have multiple benefits. It's zero emission, it's a noise and energy cost reduction, and of course, they provide high performance. The next challenge will be the hydrogen supply and storage on a job site, but it could be a real game changer and provide fast recharge for construction users. And it's a modular solution, so typically it's a full electric machine fitted with a lithium-ion battery, and it can be recharged both by the diesel or by the hydrogen fuel cell range extender. So come and see us on Manitou booth at Bauma.
Yeah, great to see Manitou pursuing the hydrogen revolution. While I was talking, just very quickly, we've had a message coming from Liebherr. I'm sure you've heard of those. They have just announced, let me see if I can find this damn thing. Bear with me 1 second. They have just announced that they have produced and presumably sold their 10,000th X-Power wheel loader. Pretty good. I mean, I have to say I'm a big fan of the X-Power wheel loader anyway, but yeah, 10,000 machines now out in the field. Congratulations to the team at Liebherr, and thank you for letting us know about that. I'm sure you'll be able to read more about that online at some point in the not too distant future. We're going to go back to the mystery machine because we've had Chris Ford guessing that it could be a Brenner 1240 wheel dozer. It's a great shout. It's not, but it's a great shout. Dan Cullen reckons it could be a Cat landfill compactor. It's not one of those. Gary Muirhead reckons it could be a UFAN YW935G. It is not one of those. Garvin, good morning over on Instagram. Let me show you a bit more. There you are. I think that merely proves that it has wheels at both ends, which you'd kind of expect because it's not a unicycle, quite clearly. Keep the guesses coming. We've just seen Manitou, who are very, very French. We're sticking with the French immediately after this.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
Okay, back to the mystery machine. Gary Muirhead reckons it could be a want. A want SW305? What in tarnation is a want SW305? No idea. It's not one of those. I do need to take that away. Let me show you this, and let me show you a bit more. There you are. At least you know what the pointy end looks like. Gary Muirhead also reckons, it was a Sani, not a want, a Sani SW305. It's not one of those either. What I would say is you're in the right part of the world. Dwell on that. Yes, I said I was going to give you some more French, and we're going French again with Montabert in a recycling facility. Take a look. quick good morning to the guys and girls over at Muttley Plant Services who've just joined us over on Instagram. Morning, chaps. How you doing? Chaps and chapesses, I should probably say. Mystery Machine has clearly got you all a little bit, well, puzzled, I would say. Gary Muirhead is going for the XMG XC948. It's not one of those. It's not a Shandong ZL550G, although you'd be staggered just how close you are, sort of. Dan Cullen's also going for the XMG XC950. It's not Chris Ford, the XCMG XC938, and it's not a Shandong ZL. Well, see, here's the thing. It's not, but you're very close. And it's not even a Shandong. I realise there's kind of a cross-fertilisation between the Chinese manufacturers. It's not a Shandong, but you're very close with the model number. Ken Hatcher says, this site is doing my head in this morning. Hopefully I don't have a heart attack. Ken, deep breaths, count to 10. It's only until going home time, and then you can go away, maybe have a pizza, chill out. It's not the end of the world. I know it probably feels like it, but it's not the end of the world. Chris Ford is going for the Shantway L55. It is not an L55. Let me show you a bit more. There you are. Oh, a wee bit of undercarriage, if that helps. Let us know what you think that is. We're looking for make and model still. Lots of people getting very close. Dan Cullen reckons it could be an SDLG L150. It's not one of those either. Keep those coming in. We're going to be right back with the final film of the day in just a moment after this. Okay, couple of things. First of all, the film that I'm about to play you is exactly, I don't know how this worked out, but it is exactly 5 minutes long, which means you've got 5 minutes to get the Mystery Machine once I press the go button, obviously. The second thing is, as I say, this film is 5 minutes long. At about the 4 minute point, rather stupidly, I filmed with my back to a door. I was at Bauma. I'd gone upstairs into the influencer room that the fine folks at Bobcat had kindly set aside for us, because I wanted to film a piece to camera, but I left the door open. I don't have a problem with people walking around in the background. I think that's all part of the fun of the fair. But there is a guy walks in, and the guy in question is a guy called Mike Isherwood. I've known Mike for 30 plus years. Used to do the PR for Ingersoll Rand back in the day. He's been with Bobcat forever. He does the Devellon PR as well. Absolutely smashing fella. But he heard that I was on the stand and decided to put his head round the door to basically find me. And there I was mid-filming. So he makes a cameo appearance. Look out for him. It amused me. I didn't know he'd done it until I actually watched the footage back. Just very quickly, I can tell you that the Mystery Machine, Dan, is not a Shantway SL30. You now have, starting in 2 seconds, you now have 5 minutes precisely in which to get the Mystery Machine. Otherwise, I shall claim it myself. Here we go. So I am sat on the Bobcat stand. They've actually set aside an area for influencers. Not that I consider myself to be one, but having had a really good walk around the stand over the last 3 or 4 days, I've decided now is the time to kind of pick my highlights, and I'm going to break them down. First off, I'm going to talk about the demonstration of the event. Ed Butler and Steve Williamson over on the Kinsoffer stand are drawing crowds way bigger than you would expect from an attachment company. They're doing a fantastic job really interacting with the crowd, so they would certainly be in the mix with the best demonstration. I've said that I'm sat on the Bobcat stand. The Bobcat demonstration is incredible. If I tell you how confident they are of their operators' capabilities and the capabilities of their machines, they've actually got the slogan and the logo of the machines actually underneath the skid steers, so they can stand them up on end and you can see the logo. It's an astonishing show. We have got a video of it which we'll bring you at some other point, so they would be in with a shout as well. And then literally next door, a demonstration area is from Wacker Neuson, and the Wacker Neuson demonstration kind of blows your mind. They've got a brass band like an Umpa band. We're in Bavaria, what else would you expect? But not only are they performing, they're performing in machines. So there's a telescopic handle with a guy playing a saxophone in it. There's a guy sat in the skip of a bucket playing the drums. And there's a guy sat in the bucket of an excavator as it goes around playing the trumpet. So if I had to pick, I'm picking all three for different reasons. But Wacker Neuson, Kinshofer, Bobcat, unquestionably the best demonstrations of the show. I guess the next category I'd like to look at would be the showstopper of the show. And it's a hard one. It is a hard one, this. If you go over to the Komatsu stand, there's the PC7000, massive electric excavator, which is drawing crowds of thousands. Literally, every time they fire it up, thousands of people. You go over to the Liebherr stand where they've got the T264, the electric truck, and the R9400 mining excavator as well, right alongside it. Again, thousands and thousands of people. But if I had to choose the showstopper, the one that is literally stopping people in their tracks, I'm going with the Landcross One over at Hitachi. It is only a concept, which I appreciate. I've got to be honest, I wish we did more of that. I wish we could understand the thinking of the designers and the engineers, what they were thinking of for the future, because I think it just gives us an incredible insight into what the future might look like. So if I had to pick an absolute showstopper, the Landcross One from Hitachi. This one is going to be the hardest category of all. Best machine at the show. How do you even begin to answer that? There's more than 1,000 exhibitors here. I haven't even seen all of the machines. Have to say, been very impressed by the SK300, the straight boom excavator from Kobelco. Been very, very impressed with the Wakor Black Edition wheel loader. That looks phenomenal. All of the K-Teg machines over on the Hitachi stand, which is just over to my right there, just blows me away. The concept machine, I can't really include that because it's not actually a living, breathing machine, but I would actually include that within. The big electric excavator from Komatsu, that would certainly be in the running. The big machines over on the Liebherr stand, I've actually got a slightly different opinion, and I must admit this is influenced by the fact that I am first and foremost a demolition kind of guy. There's two red demolition machines over on the Liebherr stand. If I was spending my own money, that's where I'd spend it. But machine of the year, or the machine of the show, it's quite a surprising one, given what there is on display here, given the size and the magnitude and everything that's on display. I want to go with a 20-ton excavator. 20-ton excavator from Komatsu, the PC220. It's got lots and lots of bells and whistles, electric machine control, and all of that kind of thing. But in terms of sheer volume sales, of all the new machines that I've seen launched here, that's going to be the big one. The PC220. I think Komatsu customers have been waiting for it for a long time. It's finally here, and they will be selling those in their droves. So as hard as it is to decide among all the fantastic machines that are here, I have to say my personal favourite, the PC220 from Komatsu. There you are, and I stand by that. I've had a chance to reconsider it. I do think they will sell the most of all of those machines that we saw. So there you are. Mystery Machine, I'm going to tell you now, I win. We had some more guesses. We had Chris Ford with the Shantway L55. We had Dan with the SDLG L150. Dan with the Shantway SL30. Chris Ford with the Tavol 935G. Dan with the Kintan KT953. Kerry Jones with the Changelin or Changlin, I don't know, one of those, ZL50G. Well, very close. It's not, but it's very close. Again, because of this cross-fertilization between the various Chinese manufacturers, you're not far off, but you're not right at all. Dan Cullen going for the Cineway LW600K. It's not. Dan is actually leaving us. Chris Ford, the SD LG L958F. And Dan Cullen says, can't wait to see the new PC220. We do have a film of it, which is coming very soon, so keep an eye out for that. Let me tell you, the correct answer for our mystery machine today is that it is, in fact, an XCMG ZL rather, 55G. Well, 55GV actually, but it is the XMG ZL55G. As I say, we had a few people mentioning, let me see if I can find them, things like that. The ZL50G. ZL50G is not a million miles away, but it is the XMG, as you can quite clearly see from the badging there. And Dan Cullen says, damn. So, yes, on something of a rarity these days, I'm going to claim victory. In fact, let me just have a very quick look. That is the first one I've won this month. Where are we now? It is the 14th of May. We've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We've had 9 outings, and I finally got some points on the board. So, yeah. Are you doing another League of Excavators that we did last year? That's a thought. That is a thought, isn't it? I looked at a thing the other day. There's a website called Live Reacting, I think it's called, that allows you to do live polls, but it's clunky. I mean, the system is absolutely fine, and I could incorporate it and I could show it to you on the screen. But in order for you to vote, you kind of have to go somewhere else, which kind of defeats the object of what we're trying to do here. But let me have a think about that, Gary. I think given that we've done the excavators, maybe we do something else. Maybe we do, I don't know, wheel loaders or something. The Wheel Loader World Championships. Leave me to mull that over. Leave me to mull that over. If I can come up with enough machines to make it, at least a week, possibly a fortnight, then let me see what I can come up with on all that. And Dan Cullen saying, well done, Mark. Thank you very much indeed, Dan. Yes, it's taken 2 weeks, but I finally got some points on the board. Anywho, that's about it for the main part of this morning's show. I'm going to roll the outro in just a second before leaping gazelle-like over into my morning monologue. If you can't stick around for that, do please stay safe. Look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues. I hope to see you again very, very soon indeed. But if you do have the time and the inclination, and if you like yourself a bit of a conspiracy theory, stick around, because I'll be back immediately after... Let me be clear, I am not one for conspiracy theories. Don't get me wrong, I find them entertaining, and I'm often amused when someone shares such a theory, convinced that it's authentic, when anyone with half a brain can clearly see that it isn't. But I don't believe there are little green men on ice at the Roswell facility in New Mexico. I don't believe there's a prehistoric dinosaur lurking in the depths of Loch Ness, nor is there a giant half-man, half-ape roaming the American wilderness. Furthermore, I do not believe that there is a secret cabal of lizard people controlling the global economy. But with all that being said, let's imagine, just for fun, just amongst us, that we in the demolition and construction industry were to get together and amongst ourselves figure out how to control the industry for our own good, to skew it in a direction favourable to us, to stack the odds in favour of the few rather than the many. How would you go about that? Well, if it was me, I'd start by gathering some like-minded individuals who shared my desire for power and wealth. There might be a bit of resistance at first, accusations of collusion and monopolisation, but you could spin it as the industry unifying for the greater good. Having assembled that group, what would I do next? Well, perhaps I'd start to compile a set of rules and regulations that would be onerous to smaller companies. Perhaps compliance with those regulations would be difficult or expensive or both. And when those smaller companies couldn't or wouldn't comply, perhaps I'd start buying up the better ones. And maybe I'd allow the lesser ones to wither and die. Again, it would require some careful marketing, but who's going to complain when the stated aim of your new organisation is to raise standards? Now, some smaller and specialist contractors might have a strong local and loyal base. They might survive the initial regulation purge. So how do you skew and manipulate the market just a little bit further, make their lives just a little bit more uncomfortable? Well, what if you and your cohort got together to create some new training standards? Maybe you'd back those standards with a competence card scheme, a scheme in which cards, a scheme in which the cards required, a scheme in which the cards required regular and expensive replacement. And maybe every once in a while you'd shift the goalposts, make the training standards just a little less attainable, a little more expensive to accomplish and maintain. But hey, you're providing training. Who could possibly object to that? As a smart, power hungry businessman, I'd be aware that staff can be deeply problematic. They want holidays, sick pay, maternity and paternity leave. Some even require healthcare. And if those staff are a problem when times are good, they're an even bigger problem when workloads take a dive. Nobody needs the hassle or the cost of redundancy payments, do they? So, how about offloading all those staff? Banish them into self employment so they can be picked up and put down at will. No sick pay, no health cover, and no pesky redundancy payments when the market goes tits up. Of course, that would take away their job security and could quite possibly have a negative impact on their mental health, for example. But getting them off the books makes the bottom line look better. It protects you from market fluctuations and it negates any dealings with bothersome unions. On the face of it, this might seem like a bit of a difficult sell, particularly to the employed staff that are being pushed out the door. But you could remind them of all the freedom they will enjoy once they're no longer trapped in the 9 to 5 rat race, and just gloss over the fact that their position is now, at best, tenuous. Now, what if you then worked on with your clients and convinced them that the only type of contractor that was capable of achieving the standards they require were the big ones? You might suggest blimey, trouble with my tongue today. You might suggest they instigate some form of pre-qualification, a costly and time-consuming system in which contractors must commit potentially hundreds of man-hours merely to be admitted onto a tender list or framework. Maybe you'd recommend environmental, safety and employment standards that only the industry elite could conceivably provide. And maybe you'd also suggest that your clients insist upon working only with contractors with massive financial clout, with industry accreditations held by only a handful of firms, and with insurance up the wazoo. What client wouldn't want to be associated with the cream of the industry? And then imagine how you and your secret cohort might react if, say, the government were to propose legislative changes that might prove expensive. Maybe they're planning to hike the price of waste disposal or landfill, or maybe they're threatening to remove the subsidy on red diesel. Now, you and your industry elite pride yourselves on having the ear of government, so you could potentially lean on a few ministers to get them to think again. Together with your co-conspirators, you also have enormous financial clout. Altogether, you account for a nice big chunk of the nation's GDP. If the government refuses to play ball, you might threaten them, bend them to your will. Alternatively, you could just sit on your hands. You could stand idly by while the cost of doing business takes a sharp upward turn. Yeah, that price hike might sting you for a bit, but would also remove a few more of your competitors, tidy up the marketplace just a little bit more. And then, when you've done all of this, when you've manipulated, bent, and twisted the market and shaped it to your will, you will sit atop an industry where only the massive survive, where all the biggest construction, civil engineering, and infrastructure projects are shared amongst a relatively small handful of firms. And you'll be doing all of that in the second most expensive construction sector in the entire world. But as I said at the outset, I don't believe in conspiracy theories. None of that could happen in the real world, could it? Yeah, there you are. There's my conspiracy theory for the day. Screen's just gone weird. Did you ever manage to pin down Dr. Terry about doing an interview on his view of the state of the demolition industry right now? I'd love to hear his opinion. Do you know what, Gary? You are like my conscience. You're that little voice on my shoulder saying you've forgotten a thing or you haven't done a thing, and I love you for it. So when I was up at where did I go? I went to Leeds, didn't I? And I said to Terry, "We need to get you back on the show. You know your opinions are valued." And he said, "Yeah, give me a call. Let's do that." That was about 2 months ago, and I still haven't done it. Gary, when I've done this, when I've finished putting this all together, when I've finished uploading the various bits and pieces to the various, I'm going to write it down, and I promise you, I promise you, I will throw out an email to Terry and we'll get him on a show, because I'm keen to do that. I'm also speaking to a couple of other people. I'm talking to somebody about doing something on mental health. I'm also speaking to a company about doing something on waste disposal. Apparently, the Environment Agency are going to be having a crackdown on fly tipping and illegal waste disposal, which obviously is going to impact upon demolition and construction contractors and that kind of thing. So I've reached out. I've got a company, a waste company, who are willing to come on the show, or come onto a recorded show probably, and we will get that done as well. So there's lots and lots and lots of stuff coming up. Plus, in addition to all of that, I do have I'm working on an initial 3-parter about the unspoken effect of our switch from diesel to electric and ultimately to hydrogen. And I'm also kicking around the notion of doing something very, very similar, but on remote control, more specifically autonomy. Haven't quite got that straight in my head yet, mainly because my head is all over the place, but I will do all of that. Now, Dan says, what about Yvonne on asbestos awareness? I spoke to Yvonne, well, she was on the show a couple of days ago as a comment. I did speak to her about that. Starting to wonder, and this is certainly no reflection on Yvonne herself, but we had a really long chat about this maybe a week or so ago. Just so you know, Yvonne is actually Dutch, speaks better English than I do, but she's Dutch, and I'm now starting to wonder if she might actually recommend somebody maybe a little more familiar with UK regulations. She knows the regulations, but I think somebody from here in the UK that has got their finger on the pulse rather than somebody that takes a bit of a global overview might be more valuable. I am speaking to her, Dan, rest assured, because I do think it's like the mental health thing, like the waste disposal thing. I do think they're very, very important points to cover, but I want to make sure I get the right person so that we can really sort of dig down. I don't want to take up your time asking a guest about asbestos regulations and the fallout thereof, when they may not actually be quite as aware of the UK take on those regulations as somebody else might be. So I'm on it. Trust me, I am. CJ Plant Hydraulic Repairs just joined us over on Instagram. Good morning to you fellas. Keep up the good work. We do like a few hydraulic repairs. So yes, lots and lots of stuff coming up. I could do with a clone. I could do with a clone. My problem is, when I first started doing this show, my initial obstacle to overcome was coming up with enough content to fill a daily show. Turns out I was worried about nothing on that, because frankly, that's fairly straightforward. I think a lot of the manufacturers are now producing videos as they launch new machines. Obviously, I've got Fred lurking in the background doing his stuff. I mean, that Manitou video was part of his handiwork. We've got more to come on that. The biggest problem I have now is I because I don't have to worry about that now. All I do really focus on, to any great degree, is like the morning monologue and the blog posts and the vlog posts that come as a result of that. And there are times when I sit down and I think I don't actually know what I want to talk about tomorrow. But more often, far more often, it's a case of, well, I could do this, I could do that, I could do this, I could do that. I've got this one, I've got that one. I mean, I've got, as it stands at the moment, I've actually got 4 episodes written and ready to roll. I mean, they're literally sat in the background, and I'm just choosing them, as a day. Oh, I'll do that one. And, by the end of probably today or possibly tomorrow morning, I'll have another one as well, and possibly even 2. Going back to Gary. So Gary says, have we got an After Dark show in the pipeline? Yes, we have. We have. My plan basically with these conversations with, Terry would be one, whoever we end up doing asbestos with, and the landfill one. What I want to do with those is not not have them on this show, as they're very welcome. Everyone's welcome on this show, as you well know. But what I would like to do is take longer. Things like this landfill crackdown, or the waste disposal crackdown, fly tipping crackdown. It's very easy to take that at face value and say, well, the Environment Agency are doing this, but what about what lies behind that? Like the fact that the government, in its infinite wisdom, closed a huge amount of landfills a decade or so ago. What about the fact that every time they put up the landfill tax, there is a spike in fly tipping? I'm not saying that the fly tipping is their fault, but they certainly don't help. They are a contributory factor. All of that takes discussion time. Now, most of the stuff that we do on this show tends to be, 3, 4, 5 minutes long. I'd like to spend half an hour chatting about that. I really want to get into the nitty gritty of the issue, much the same as asbestos, much the same as the state of the demolition nation as we stand at the moment. So I think those will be suitable for After Dark. Now, all of those three that I've just mentioned are probably not appropriate for live shows, but I can certainly pre-record them and play them to you after dark. And maybe we'll take a few snippets and we'll use them in the daily show for those that can't make the evening shows. But we are going to be doing a bit of that, no question about it. Gary also says, I remember the show was about 10 minutes long and now it's over an hour every day. Yeah, it really is. And it also used to be I wouldn't say it goes so far as to say it was a side hustle, but I was still producing sort of articles and going to sites and going to manufacturers and stuff like that. It's literally taken over my entire working day. I mean, it is the main thing that I do. I am off to. I've got a cruise coming up in end of July, beginning of August, which will take me away for the best part of 2 weeks. But I'm also going over to Italy. I can't even remember the dates, but the European Demolition Association are doing a fact-finding tour of Italy, and I've been invited to take part in that. I'm not entirely sure how long I'm going to be there, but again, can't avoid it because it's an interesting thing, and I love the Italian market, I love the Italian people, love the Italian food even more, but it will also give me an opportunity to produce more of the stuff that we rely upon for this show. So that's coming up at some point in June, maybe the second week in June, thereabouts. So keep an eye out for that. I see too many big companies are taking jobs, not giving the small man a chance. Yes, going back to my my morning monologue. When you look at the way that the industry has become skewed towards, those that sit at the very top, it would be very easy to say, I wonder if they decided that in advance. I wonder if there was a meeting sort of 10, 15, 20 years ago where they went, if we did this and we did that, and then we did that, and then we did this, we could kind of own this market. As I say, I'm not one for conspiracy theories, but when you look at the way that things have panned out, was there a plan in place? Was there a global construction demolition cabal who got their heads together and went, we could make a lot of money here. We could get rid of some of our competitors. We could make life very difficult for those that remain. It makes you wonder. One that's always troubled me is the National Demolition Training Group, and they're not unique, but I'm going to use them as an example. Many, many, many moons ago, and I'm fairly sure this was like the 70s, it was decided that to improve the quality of workers within demolition, they would form the National Demolition Training Group. The NFDC formed the National Demolition Training Group. They floated it off, but it's still very much, part of an arm of the NFDC. On the face of it, much as I said in my conspiracy theory thing, on the face of it, looking to raise training standards is nothing but a positive. How could you possibly criticize anyone wanting to improve training and competence standards? You can't. It's beyond reproach, surely. Back in the day, there was a time when the NDTG, National Demolition Training Group, were required by their own rules and regulations to have somebody who was not an NFDC member on their committee. So, in other words, if the NFDC got together and said, we are going to change the rules and regulations regarding training in the demolition industry, and it's going to impact everyone to a huge degree, there would be a voice there, and somebody not of the NFDC could say, hang on a minute, you can't do that. That's going to really impact people. That's going to possibly send people out of business. Stop right there. Have another think. That person doesn't exist anymore. There isn't currently, and there hasn't been for a good few years, there isn't currently a non-NFDC person within the NDTG, within the committee that runs it anyway. So if you were that way inclined, you as the NFDC, but over onto the NDTG, if you decided we could do with a few less competitors, why don't we create a training standard that is impossible for everybody to achieve apart from us? Or what about if we were planning to introduce a huge leap forward in the training accreditation system? We know it's coming, so we can adjust our systems accordingly, and we can start building up to that. But we won't tell anyone else until it's actually here, and they will then have to drop everything and run away to bring themselves up to our standard. That is a very, very real possibility. Bearing in mind as I say, remember the links between the NFDC and the NDTG, bearing in mind that the NFDC is about 135 odd members, some of them very odd. They hold sway over the way that the training is managed across the entire industry. So there is a fraction of that 135 members of the NFDC who are over on the NDTG, and that tiny little fraction dictate training standards for 500-600 demolition companies across the UK. So even if you were being generous, a quarter of the industry is dictating the rules for 3/4 of the industry. Anybody else getting a faint whiff of rat? Does that smell fishy at all? Dan Cullen says, "Look at Flannery. They took over Plant Hire." Yeah, when you think back, not so long ago, I wouldn't say Flannery were a bit part player, but there were much bigger firms in the mix than Flannery. Not now. Flannery, Lynch, True 7, people like that come up on the blind side and pretty much run the show now, don't they? And they get the machines quicker than the small man from the likes of Cat and Hitachi, and flood them with orders. Yeah. And again, I mean, I'm fairly sure that with those sort of companies, that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you've got to the point where you've got a depot in every major town in the country, you will need a lot of machines. If you need a lot of machines, you have a very big checkbook, and I'm sure the likes of Caterpillar and Hitachi and all the other manufacturers are beating a path to your door. They will bend over backwards in terms of finance agreements, discount levels, after sale support, and everything else. But that does have an impact, and I think that was highlighted. Do you remember when we had that issue where that ship got stuck in the canal, and there were concerns about supply chain for certain electronics and components and stuff, and there was a bit of a shortage of machines? Who did that shortage of machines hit the hardest? Trust me, it wasn't Flannery, it wasn't Lynch, it wasn't True 7. It was Bob's Plant Hire, who buys one machine about every 5 years. Couldn't get machines for love nor money. Because, the market, deliberately or otherwise, has been manipulated to be top heavy and, upper echelon friendly. Dan says, like these house builders, civils contractors, they flood the sites now, and how do you get onto the sites? Yeah. As I say, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, and maybe that's, when you look at the way that, supply and demand works, maybe that is just a side effect of how supply and demand works. But when you look at the progression, how, major construction companies used to employ hundreds, if not thousands of people. They don't anymore. They've taken them off the books, which makes them a lot more fleet of foot. When the market goes down, they can react instantly. They haven't got to worry about redundancy payments. They just offload people. They did exactly the same with machines. You know, what major contractor these days has its own equipment fleet? Very, very few of them. It's all been outsourced to plant hire. And just look at the way that the market has formed or been manipulated. My feeling is there's a bit of both in that. I think there has been forced evolution. I think the market would ultimately have kind of shaped itself anyway, but I do think that somewhere along the lines, a few people and a few companies have nudged it in a certain direction, and organizations have nudged it in a certain direction. And that's how we've ended up with the market that we have now. Love to get your thoughts. Anyway, people, as Gary has already said, these used to be 10 minutes. They're now an hour a day. We're almost at the hour point. By the time I've finished saying goodbye, we'll have done another hour. It's cut that now. If you're not up to the scratch, they chuck you out the gate rather than give you a chance. Yeah. They have made the workforce entirely expendable. You know, let's go back. I mean, and this is my lifetime, my career span. You know, when you used to have major contractors who employed lots of people, and for one thing, they often had union representation. So, you know, letting people go and making people redundant was already quite difficult. You had to overcome the union hurdle to begin with. Lots of employment law and that kind of thing. And in addition to that, you know, getting rid of somebody who may have been with you for 10, 15, 20, 30 years, fucking expensive, very expensive. You take everyone off your books, apart from some middle managers to make sure that everything is overseen, and you outsource it either to direct employment, you know, self-employed people, or through agencies. All of that problem's gone away. Exactly the same as equipment. You used to have particularly the major civil engineering companies, the Blackwells, the Balfour Beatties, you know, the people that built our motorways and that kind of thing. They had huge holdings of scrapers and dozers and excavators and dump trucks and everything else. But all of those were expensive. All of those depreciated very quickly. They went wrong. They had to be fixed. They had to be repaired and maintained. They had to be fueled and so on down the line. And someone very sensibly, somewhere, well, depending how you look at it, someone said at one point, why don't we just offload the lot? Yes, you know, Flannery's and True 7 and Lynch will get very, very big and very, very powerful. But if our workload goes down, we haven't had the depreciation of those machines. We haven't got an asset that nobody else wants. We're not at the mercy of the used equipment market. We just take it away. Take it away. You know, when a project is over and done with, we haven't got to park a machine up. We just send it away. It's not our problem. Gary says it's like Flannery up here. They get the hire and then look for a driver. I'm sure that is the case. Dan says, have a great day. And he then says, this industry has gone to the dogs. This is why it's gone tits up, because we've self-employed, no care given to the consequences of the actions, sacking the man in his 50s or 60s. No. I mean, as I say, you go back, you know, my career span, you go back 10, 20, 30 years. You wanted to get rid of somebody because you decided their face didn't fit. They weren't doing things the way that you liked them done. If they were a bit slow on the uptake, if you'd forced a round peg into a square hole or whatever it might be, for one reason or another, you want to let somebody go. You had to jump through a lot of hoops. You know, get past the unions, get past health, the HR department or the personnel department, as we used to call it, get past the union and so on, and then possibly send him away with a big check in his back pocket. Now, not my problem. You don't cut it in the first hour, on your bike, pal. We'll get somebody else that can. Yeah. And you think back to, when would it have been? Maybe 20, 25 years ago. There were accusations of people being blacklisted within the construction industry in the UK. In other words, a lot of it was related to unionization, where you had somebody who was a bit outspoken about workers' rights and that kind of thing. And their employer would find a way to let them go or to push them out the door. But not content with just pushing them out the door, they would then blacklist them. So if they were asked for a reference, Fred Bloggs has just applied for a job here. You don't want to touch him. He's a rabble rouser. You don't want anything to do with him. He's a union man. He'll have people out on strike in 5 minutes flat. Give him a wide berth. and blacklisting went on. Now you probably don't have to worry about it. You just make somebody uncomfortable, send them out the door. Not your problem anymore. And if somebody else chooses to employ them, well, as I say, not my problem, pal. You've pushed it down the line. Yeah. I don't believe in conspiracy theories, and yet I've just spent the best part of half an hour expounding a conspiracy theory. For that, I apologise. I'll be back tomorrow, 10 o'clock, for yet more of the same. Dan very quickly says, older guy may not be able to run around looking for work, and it's hard. Yeah, it is hard. It is hard. And, you know, if you are going to employ people, you would like to think that you would probably want somebody a bit younger, a bit less experienced. So for one thing, they'd probably be a bit cheaper, but you could then mold them to your ways. You know, we like this done in this way, and we like our machines done this way, and so on down the line. An older person, probably not going to be there forever, probably a bit set in their ways, probably comes with a bit of baggage, you know, the way that this is the way I've done it in the past. Well, we don't want you to do it like that, but this is the way I've done it. So yeah, would be harder for the older guy. Gary Muirhead says, I'm sure the blacklist book is still out there. We just don't hear about it these days. It could well be. Could well be. I mean, I do wonder, you know, given the virtual non-existence of unions these days, I'm not entirely sure that is entirely necessary now. And given the fact that a lot of people are self-employed or agency employed, I'm not sure it's necessary, but it does make you wonder. But then they won't give an inexperienced operator a chance, as they're not good enough. It's a double-edged sword, isn't it? It is a double-edged sword. And unfortunately, you know, going back to what I said, you know, if you were inclined towards conspiracy theories, go back to what I said about the NFDC NDTG. You have a quarter of the industry dictating the rules, training wise, for 100% of it. So 25% dictates the training regime for 100%. Now think about that from, you know, if you look at the influence that in the construction side of things, Build UK have. I don't know how many members Build UK is now, 15, 20, whatever it might be. But you look at the amount of influence that they have. You know, things like the competence card scheme. The competence card scheme would not and could not survive without their tacit requirement of it to be continued. You know, those at the upper echelons have decided we need a piece of plastic that says somebody has sat a test or whatever it might be. If they decided we don't need that anymore, that whole deck of cards, that whole house of cards will come crashing down. But they do insist. So as a result of 10, 20, 30 companies insisting on a little bit of plastic, 2.5 million people have to say, yes, sir, and go and get themselves a bit of plastic. It's literally illegal now to give an operator a bad rep. It's illegal to pickpocket. It's illegal to steal from your local Sainsbury's. It's illegal to park on double yellow lines. It's illegal to mug old ladies. It's illegal to rape people. It's illegal to murder people. All of those things still happen, don't they? Because you can be held responsible for them not able to find jobs. I think back in the day, you know, when everything was paper-based, you know, you'd send a message to your former, or somebody would send a message to your former employer. You know, Dan Cullen, what do you reckon? Yeah, he's good operator, no problem at all. Fantastic, we're going to employ him. Does that happen now? Or is it, I've got a bloke here, Dan Cullen. Yeah, he's a good operator, got a bit too much to say for himself. Cheers, that's all I need to know. Bosh, would you ever know? I don't know why I did that as a Cockney. I have no idea. That just, it lurks in the background sometimes. But would you know? And again, I'm not suggesting that this is, you know, the reason they do it. But when you think about, you know, meetings among construction plant hire association, Build UK, Construction Leadership Council, NFDC, and all these trade bodies. You imagine you're sat there with your glass of port in one hand and your big old fuck off cigar in the other, and you're enjoying life. And yes, I had a fine fellow, little Irish fellow called Dan Collins. Dan Collins seems like a splendid fellow. Wants to join the company. I understand he worked for you. Yes, he did. Very good operator, but a bit of a pain in the ass. Way too much to talk about. Way too much to say about himself. Yes, maybe I'll reconsider. Another port, sir? Really? That's the point. You never know. CVs are unheard of in construction. Yeah. And also, again, and I'm not saying I believe that this is a deliberate conspiracy theory. Think about the speed of employment within this industry. You've asked for 3, 4, a dozen agency guys to turn up on a site in Cambridge on Monday morning, and Monday morning rolls around, and rather than getting 12, you get 7. You get on the phone to the agency. We're 5 short. What you got? I've got this Cullen fella. Yeah, send him along. You do. Where is the check? And yes, you might arrive, and they might look at your card. And, no, but not. What are his union credentials? What is his health and safety track record? What is his drink and drug back record? No, we need a warm body in a seat for Monday. We haven't got one. He'll do. Yeah. Or you might get 15 guys when you're looking for 10. Yeah, unfortunately, I think the way that employment works now, you need 15 when you only want 10, because half the time, 5 of them won't turn up anyway. Yeah. Anyway, people, I was saying goodbye 10 minutes ago. I'm going to say it properly now. I'll be back tomorrow for yet more of the same. Until then, everybody have a fantastic day. And Dan, you said goodbye at least half an hour ago, and you're still here. Go and do some work, man, because otherwise your CV will look terrible and people will start talking about you. Or maybe not. You never know. People, have a fantastic day. I'll see you all again very, very soon. Till then, have a good